Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Washington Gun Law TV. I'm Washington Gun Law President William Kirk. Thanks for joining us. Hey, for those of you who geek out on this channel here frequently, you know that our motto is we're not going to tell you how to think. We are going to give you all the stuff to think about. And so, surprisingly, when I try to stay true to that mission, I like to take a look at data. Why? Well, because data kind of tells us what really did happen. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to start breaking down a huge chunk of data that was recently released by the Crime Prevention Research Center, Dr. John Lott. Obviously very reliable, very valuable data. Today's video is going to be to kind of break it all down for you. And then we got some sub videos coming out based upon some of the subcomponents here. But I got to tell you, this is fascinating and one that we all need to start educating ourselves on. So today, let's spend a few minutes and let's talk about the truth about America's gun violence issue. Okay, so what we are talking about today is a recently published study by the Crime Prevention Research Center, Dr. John Lott, entitled Updated Information on Mass Public Shootings from 1998 through October 2023. Again, it was published January 12th of 2024. This is just raw data. That's all this is just raw data. There is no extrapolation. There's no opinions from Dr. Lott here. This is what the data shows. But I think that we can begin to learn some very, very valuable things here because as we know, every time a piece of civilian disarmament legislation is advanced by your state government or by the federal government or by the ATF just making up rules as they go along, it's all about saving lives, isn't it? Well, does the data begin to back that up? Dr. Lott and everyone over there at Crime Prevention Research Center did a fantastic job of breaking down some data. And what I'm going to do is we're going to go through this data in 10 separate categories so that you can understand some of the information that's related to mass shootings in the United States from the year 1998 until October of 2023. Okay, now when we talk about mass shootings, understand that we are talking about a shooting not associated with another type of crime in which 4 or more victims were wounded, okay? And that's kind of the agreed upon parameters here that everyone's using. So right there, take this data for what it's worth. But let's immediately talk about the type of firearm which is most commonly used in mass shootings. It's the scary assault weapon, right? Wrong. Actually, the data here shows us that more than half of all mass shootings, 52.5%, it is a handgun that is used. As a matter of fact, the number of mass shootings that occurred only with rifles accounts for 16.8%. And if you combine both murders with rifles only and those with handguns and rifles, you see that you actually have a 34.7%. So by and large, the firearm which is most frequently used in mass shootings is the handgun. Now, don't start spreading that rumor too quickly with your state legislature, however, otherwise you're likely to see a bill to ban all handguns. Let's talk about the next type of thing, which is, are mass shootings actually increasing or decreasing in recent years? Well, as you can see, the data here with the dotted orange line being your median unfortunately shows that mass shootings, that is shootings in which there are at least 4 or more victims which are injured or killed, are in fact increasing. Now, this would also include all of your gang-related violence, i.e. what you oftentimes see on the south side of Chicago and other large urban areas. But you see a couple of other interesting pieces of data here as well. For example, right here, you can see that the number of individuals who have actually been killed in mass shootings has leveled off, appears to actually even be decreasing a little bit, and then a big decrease in the number of people who are actually murdered per each individual attack. Now, what is the race of all of these mass shooters? They're all white dudes, right? Well, actually, the data shows us that 54.9% of mass public shooters are in fact white or Caucasian. But currently, if you take a look at most data on the United States population, it's about 59.3% Caucasian. So the numbers are slightly less than the average of the population. Well, let's talk about all the white supremacy, because almost all mass shootings are actually committed by a white supremacist, right? Wrong. The data here shows us that only 7% of all mass public shooters actually were affiliated with any type of white supremacy, and an additional 8% were found to have looked at some type of white supremacist writings, but no actual direct statements to the links, which means that 85% of all mass public shooters have no affiliation whatsoever with white supremacy. Gender. This should come as a shock to nobody, but 96.1% of all mass public shooters are male, while a mere 3.9% are female. Age. The age of the mass public shooter. Now, I found this to be most fascinating because there is a whole school of thought out there that believes that all of this is caused by mental health issues and exposure to a lot of gratuitous violence, including first-person shooter games. Now, if that has any chance of being true, we're going to have to see a huge majority of these mass public shooters be younger in age, right? Because you're not going to have a lot of 75-year-olds and 65-year-olds who grew up taking mental health medications or grew up playing any video games, let alone first-person shooter games. Here's what the data shows us. The percent of mass shooters by age from 1998 to 2023 show that 17% were under age 21, 32% were age 21 to 30, 24% were age 31 to 40, and the numbers start dropping off significantly thereafter. In fact, 73% of all mass shooters are under the age of 40. And when we take a look at the percentage based upon age distribution, we see that 13% of all mass public shooters are only 16 to 20 years of age. 20%, the largest group by far, is age 21 to 25. 26 to 30-year-olds account for 12%, and 31 to 35-year-olds account for an additional 9%. Once again, you're seeing the higher concentration of mass public shooters in people of a younger age. Mental health. Obviously, these people have mental health issues. Well, that's kind of one of the big yeah, because sane people don't walk into a public place and start shooting it up. But here was a piece of data that I found actually quite surprising. It appears that 51% of all mass shooting suspects have already seen or had seen a mental health care professional prior to the attack. While I'm sure that almost all 100% had some mental health type issues, it shocks me to know that just a little bit more than half had actually already sought help for those issues. Veterans. I'm very concerned about the overall mental well-being of our veterans and how we treat them. It's based upon the number of suicides that we see on an alarming daily basis involving veterans. I also found something rather alarming here. You see, 20% of all mass public shootings were committed by a veteran, while 80% were committed by those who had not served. But here's the thing that's most scary. In 1980, the percentage of Americans who had served in the United States military was 18%. However, by the year 2022, the number of individuals who served in the United States military was down to 6%. However, the number of mass public shootings committed by a veteran during that time exceeds the number barely starting in the early 80s, but grotesquely exceeds that number by current times. This is the one that I think everybody should circle, okay? And it's this. Gun-free zones, sensitive places. They save lives, don't they? Wrong. Because the percent of mass public shootings between 1998 and 2023 that occurred in a gun-free zone accounted for 82% of all mass public shootings. Only 18% were committed outside a gun-free zone. And then finally, we need to take a look at where all of these horrific incidents occur state by state to just see how well are the gun laws addressing those issues. And what the Crime Prevention Research Center here did was they kind of took a look at the data over a full set, and then they kind of took a look at the data over the last 20 years, and then the data over the last 10 years. So you could see whether or not this ratcheting up of gun laws, or as we like to call, this increasing effort to disarm lawful civilians, is working to save lives. You see, if we take a look at the data from 2000 to 2023, we will see that the leading areas in which we might have mass public shooters included the District of Columbia, Wisconsin, Washington, Maine, Colorado, Nevada, Connecticut, and Idaho. Now, when we take a look at that same data points, but now shrink down the window of time from 2010 to October of 2023, we see, well, the District of Columbia is still killing it. More ways than one. Maine, Nevada, Connecticut, Colorado, Washington, Tennessee, Minnesota, Wisconsin. Oh, California's right there. Actually above Florida. I wonder how all of those gun laws are working out for them. Now, if we take a look at the data points for just the last 3 years, we see Maine now is in first place, Colorado, Oklahoma, Kentucky, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Missouri, Indiana, Tennessee, Washington, and California. And that just doesn't make any sense because between Washington and California, nobody has worked more feverishly to pass gun safety regulations, translation civilian disarmament legislation, than those two states. So, like I said, we're going to be doing a subset of videos where we're going to take some of these components and we're going to geek out on them a little bit further. The name of the study, once again, is Updated Information on Mass Public Shootings from 1998 through October 2023. We will link it up down below so that if you want to geek out on it for yourself, you will be able to do so. If you guys got any other questions about this or anything else related to what's left of our Second Amendment rights, you guys should know how to get a hold of Washington Gun Law by now. If you don't, that's okay. That information is also down there in the description box. Now, in the meantime, let's everyone remember that part of being a lawful and responsible gun owner, like we talk about all the time here, is to know what the law is in every situation, how it applies to you in any instance that you may find yourself. Until next time, thanks for watching and stay safe.